So yesterday, I thought of doing the whiteboard, and you can come a little bit this way. Over there, it's too far. I think you might not see, and I don't like to repeat myself when I'm explaining, or I can't see, something like that. So, the word on the street, as they say, is that this is a good idea, doing this. So I'm getting input from students also online, because I posted this yesterday. I'm calling it Dhamma at the whiteboard, or Dhamma by the whiteboard. How are we saying it? Eviana in Italian? In the Lavagna. See, Dhamma proximo. Alla. So we have so many ideas when we sit down to meditate, or when we're reading a book on the Dhamma. We sift it through our own filters, what Lord Buddha calls it, ditti. Yesterday we talked about ditti, and that is the big obstacle for most, if not all, meditators at one point or another, usually in the beginning. And that is the big obstacle in its grossest sense that must be overcome in order for the person to first attain Sotapatti. Because to it are attached the idea of a self, Sakaya Ditti. Just to remind you, Ditti, it's there. Now, it doesn't mean that the person is now completely free from wrong views. They still have them. But at least as it relates to the Dhamma, they are on concrete or solid ground. They know the Dhamma. They have seen the Dhamma. Like yesterday I was saying, it's like going up a hill and you're seeing the peak of the mountain for a moment, and then, but you just saw it. That's the Sotapanna. No one can convince the Sotapanna that what they experienced is not Dhamma. And that's how they will recognize what is Dhamma from Adhamma. So today, to continue on, and this being the last day of your retreat here for this week, for some of you, I decided to kind of elaborate on some of the questions that I'm seeing coming up during the interviews. And there is a theme that happens, and this is normal. When we meditate, we often have this notion that we're the only ones who are getting it wrong. We are the ones who are somehow, we're trying to grope in the dark. Even though you might be very well-versed in the Dhamma, but when it comes to the practicality of it, the application of it, of the Dhamma, meaning in the practice, it becomes somewhat hazy. It's not so clear. So I made notes as to what might be some of those areas that I'd like to address. Okay, the first one I want to address is about hindrances. Excuse me. Now, I mentioned the relaxed step, and I also mentioned in the book as well the relationship of the 6 R's or the 5 R's. Some people say even less R's. It doesn't matter. What matters is, am I applying it the correct way? So, just to recap, you're recognizing the hindrances there. You have been moved, distracted away from your meditation object. Okay. A thought, is that a hindrance? Could be. So do I have to do the 6 R's the whole time with every single thing that arises? That is what creates confusion in the mind of the practitioner. So when I say in the book or here to you or in interviews, you must also always apply the 6 R's, that is when the hindrance is so strong that it grabbed you by the hand or neck or leg and is pulling you away from your object of meditation. This is what happens when you have been distracted for a while, and suddenly you come to and you're like, oh, I'm supposed to be on metta. And then you look at the clock and it's basically 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 1 hour. You've been away and constructing these beautiful castles in the sky. It is then that instead of you beating yourself up or pulling yourself like the way they do I used to do too, by the way, and Lord Buddha, as Siddhartha used to do, suppressingly pull yourself back to the object of meditation. If you've ever done the 10-day retreats, Vipassana Goenka style, that's what they do. Not just them, but that's just an example because it's now the most widely known meditation protocol in the world. I've done it quite a number of years. So that's basically, it's not from him. It actually, as I mentioned, it comes from the dry Vipassana, which was highly influenced by the Visuddhimagga, Venerable Buddha Gosas. So what do? So you see a distraction, let's say on the horizon, showing up. A thought, maybe a feeling, just a feeling. Naturally, you're going to want to go, and if it's an itch, you're going to want to scratch that leg. Or it feels like something's walking on your neck or in your hair or your head. The first tendency is to drop what you are doing and to go and cater to that. And 99% of the time, we look and there's nothing. No animal, no giant scorpion is walking on your head. And the scratch is, in fact, it didn't even need a scratch. The itch didn't need one. But guess what? You are now off your meditation object. So when you see the object, if it has not become, if this is a small star and now it's become big, this is when we are supposed to quickly do the 6 R's. Otherwise, your mind will become agitated. The moment you see a far distance, a tiny little speck of a hindrance, a thought, you don't drop everything and go looking for it. Oh, come over here, I'm going to 6R you. I'm going to first recognize you, and then I'm going to release, and I'm going to relax you. I'm going to relax my muscles, and your body says, I'm relaxed, though. It was just a thought. This is an area that confuses meditators. Bhante, when do I do the 6R? It's a very legitimate question. I struggled with this myself. And then you see how you don't need to. It's like running children. Right now, across from this building, there's a pool. And there are kids playing in the pool with their parents and adults around. You're sitting here meditating on a retreat. Now, you don't need to be 6Ring everything. So think of the thoughts just like those little babies playing in the pool. They're in another building. Now, if you go ahead to the hindrance, go snooping around looking for, oh, okay, yes, I do remember you. Yes, it was a wonderful memory or horrific memory. Oh, this itch feels like that itch that I had in 1946. It was terrible. It was this and it was that. Don't create stories because it's going to pull you away from the object. We do the 6 R's or the release, relax, smile, take it easy, and return, slide your way back into your object. Only when the grip of the hindrance was too tight on you. Okay? Instead of just pulling yourself from the hindrance and rushing back to the object of meditation. That is one-pointed concentration. No panya will come from that, ever. You will get something, though, for doing that. It's called an excruciating headache. Feels like you're walking around with a big 10 kilograms of like an iron ball in your head. And that's why at the end of those retreats, people feel amazing, right? Why are they feeling amazing? I'm wondering. Every time I would be nearing the end of those long drive Vipassana retreats, I would feel like jubilant. And I'm like, yeah, it's like, no, it's the fact that your head is going to finally go, ah. You don't have to sit through that torment. Lord Buddha never said, go and suffer, suffer, suffer. He never said that. But many of us want to create problems when none exist. So hindrances are only going to be applied, the 6R, when they're too massive, when they're too powerful, their grip is too tight on you. You can't seem to shake it off. That is when you do it. Otherwise, this is going to be the next portion of, I'm going to erase this. I didn't write much here, but just to kind of diagram some things. But I would like to talk about now some key areas of the of how we apply mindfulness and how we veer away. So there's a few terms. Obviously, I mentioned to you the Bojjhangas yesterday, the 7 factors of awakening. The first of which is sati. It's also the first of the spiritual faculties. It's also one of the first of the 5 spiritual powers, also part of the Noble Eightfold Path. Okay, we know it's important. So we have sati. This we know very well, at least in theory. But what I'm about to say is very important in relation to what I was just saying earlier in regards to those tiny little thoughts that show up and whether we need to apply 6 R's to them or not. And I said, just ignore them. Just like those little children over there playing in the pool, you ignore them. But how? Lord Buddha had a name for it. Remember yesterday I said there's a prefix. If you put in front of a word, it creates an antonym. Or ah. So here you add, oh, I need to use a red. You add, I'll write another word, just keep this sati intact, uncorrupted. So sati, we already have that. And here we go with aSati. aSati is the opposite of mindfulness. It is willful ignoring. Remember the object on the horizon, the tiny little thought, the tiny little sensation of an itch that you want to scratch? It starts very slight, barely noticeable, but it can intensify, and usually it's the mind that's tickling it to become into something big. Sati comes in and says, what's that? What's going on? aSati needs to be applied. That's where the willful part comes in. We need to willfully ignore. Ignore, just like a very caring, responsible parent that has a very naughty child that comes and pulls on mommy's skirt or says, Mom, I need this, give me 1 more hour to play over here like this. No, Johnny, we said once or twice and he's still going at it. What does mom do? Ignore. And she goes about her business as if it's business, it's normal. Meanwhile, that sooner or later, the child is going to, see, okay, fine, it's not going to work. So might as well just go and sit over there. Quiet. And that's what happens 100% of the time when you apply. Never fails. The problem is that we feel we're so invested in it that now sati works against us. Sati works against us. And for that, Lord Buddha had another term to describe it. When your aSati is not working, meaning you're not able to apply it, then we apply wrong attention. Okay? So that, of course, Lord Buddha had a term for that. The right attention, let's start from there. This is key. You will not attain Nibbāna without this quality of mind. Yoniso Manasikāra. In roughly translated, it means putting the attention where it's supposed to be, to the original spot. That's one way of translating it. Sometimes it's referred to as wise attention, because you're placing it where it's supposed to be. Unfortunately, if the hindrance shows up, and instead of applying aSati, it keeps dominating, obviously, because you're not ignoring it. You're giving too much fuel to that thought, to that idea, to that memory. You're saying, yeah, but it was so sweet of a memory, or it's such a horrible, I can't believe she hurt me that badly. How could she do that? How could they be saying those things about me? What am I doing? I'm fueling it. It's not we can't blame the fire if it's getting bigger, thanks to the oil that we keep pouring on it. I'm fueling it because I'm not walking away from it like that parent. I am sticking my nose into it. And that, Lord Buddha had another name for it. I'll just write it this way. I'll write it over here. Yoniso Manasikāra. Obviously, it's the antonym of this. This is unwise attention. Or, in another way, defining it, putting the attention on the wrong spot. This is when there's pain and your attention goes straight into that pain. And some teachers, unfortunately, teach you to go into the pain. Well, you know what's going to happen. The pain is not going to just disappear, it's going to get worse. Remember that little bit about the Nibbānic experience happens because there isn't agitation in the mind anymore? If you go inside the volcano that is called the center of the pain, there definitely is going to be plenty of agitation. So you can kiss Nibbāna goodbye. Okay? So, these are methods these are the principles rather, and two correct methods and two incorrect methods, depending on how it is. So, what many people do is they apply aSati to the object of meditation, oddly enough. You're supposed to apply aSati to the hindrance, not the object of meditation. So I was explaining to someone the other day, well, let's say I have in my hand a red marker, right? And I'm holding them. I have to hold this mic extension thingy so I don't trip. So let's say I'm holding on to this marker with both hands, and I'm supposed to hold them with both hands, right? So I have the red marker in my hand. Think of this as the object of meditation. So far, so good? This is metta, let's say, because that's the practice you're doing. Okay. The hindrance. In order for the mind to now engage with the hindrance, it somehow needs to be replaced by this red pen. So this red pen magically needs to remove itself from my hands so that I may end up holding the blue, the hindrance. But what did I just do? I put down the red marker. That's how I have the blue. I picked up the blue because I let go of the red marker. This is how you end up being distracted. So being distracted, it's almost sounding like, hey, it's not in my hands. It was the stars, it was outside, that factors. No! The intention was shaken. The intention of holding on, staying with my object of meditation, I relinquished. And I picked up something else, the blue marker, the hindrance. Do you see the subtlety of the mind, how it works, how it's sneaky? So please don't think that the hindrance just showed up and I ended up in this big scenario of, excuse me, one thought after another, papancha stealing me away, and I'm drowning in different thoughts, and I'm worried, and emotions are all over the place. It all started because I put down my object, and I picked up something else, and I'm going to keep on picking up something else until I realize, after green marker, purple marker, yellow marker, oh, I'm supposed to be holding on to the red marker. Oh. But I have to understand the process. That's where the 6 R's come in, so that I can understand with panya. Panya can never happen, can never take place without calmness of the mind, tranquility. Wisdom grows from there, not agitation. Is it clear, this part? So aSati is your best friend when you have hindrances. So do not pay extra attention to anything other than the object of meditation. Okay? Sounds good? All right. Next area that I wanted to address. Okay, so Bojjhangas. All right. So I'm going to, let's see if I can, does it show up here? Okay. Should I erase the board, or? I could erase the board, right? Okay. I mean, yeah, it's also going to be on in the recording, so you can look at it later. Because if I write too many things, it might be too distracting. That's the key word, right? So yesterday I spoke a bit about the Satta Bojjhangas or Bojjhangas. These are the 7 factors of awakening. These are your toolbox that you need in order for awakening to happen. That's why they're called awakening factors. So something that you need to be aware of is that yesterday I touched upon this when I mentioned the seesaw effect. They need to come in balance, in perfect balance. Once they are in balance, there's Nibbāna occurring. Okay? In perfect harmony. But we need to understand the mechanics, not of each, but also the nature of a collection. There's 2 groups that you need to be aware of in this. So I'll go over them now. So, Bojjhangas. Bojjhanga. So, sometimes called Satta Bojjhanga, which are the 7. Or some Bojjhanga sometimes. Some ma. Get it? It's like good, harmonious, collected, full, wholesome even. So Sati, actually I'll leave Sati out. So we have obviously Dhamma Vichaya. We have Virya. We have Piti. And then I'll change the color. I'm back to my object of meditation. Passadhi. Samadhi. And Upekha, or Upekha to be correct. So these are 6. If you notice, it is Satta. 7. Which one is the 7th? Sati. So for Sati, let's use a different. Oh yes, we have a green one, but I don't know if it's bright green or not. So it's fine. Sati. Now, I would like you to think, I touched upon this yesterday, when I mentioned if there's too much agitation, you don't add more vidya, because it's going to be flaring the flames, creating more and more. It's like the oil that you pour onto the fire. So, but you need to also remember that these belong to one group and these three belong to another. These are called the activating or energizing group. Okay? So activating or energizing group. These, on the other hand, are called the calming. They calm. Calming group or tranquilizing group. Meanwhile, sati is the fulcrum, is the thing which balances. Sati has to be there all the time. Sati is the thing which is going to inform you, hey, there's too much vidya. Tone it down a little bit, tiger. Easy, easy. You're too strong. You're coming in too strong, as they say, when they're landing a plane. But when I have sloth and torpor, when I'm drowsy and lazy, the last thing I want to invite into my meditation at that moment is more passaddhi. That's tranquility. I'm going to now start to snore. Or this is when the person is really trying the satta bojjhangas, but suddenly their head just goes. I sometimes would see students sitting on a meditation across the planet on a Zoom, and I'm waiting. I'm looking at them, and the head is going like this. I'm waiting for them to kind of be jolted. To like, sometimes they really go down like this. I don't know how they're managing, but they're sitting on a sofa. They're like going like this. There definitely is not sati. Why? Because sati would come and say, PT, bring PT. What are you doing? Wake up. Add Dhamma Vichaya. Dhamma Vichaya says, get up. You're embarrassing us in front of all this, group of meditators. There isn't. Why? Because this key player is not there. Sati is the eye of the telescope, the eye of the microscope. That's why sati, that's why I was mentioning in the few days ago here or at the other retreat we did, if you narrow down the teaching of Lord Buddha, the Dhamma, it's not just his teaching, he just discovered it. But if you narrow it down to the most basic, the cornerstone of Dhamma, it is sati. I don't care what anyone says. It's sati. That's what the Dhamma, that's what all the suttas are saying. That's what your experiences are keep on saying. So don't talk to me about paticca-samuppada, this, abhidhamma, this, that. Without sati, they fall apart. Of course, Lord Buddha said, without, you see the paticca-samuppada, you see the entire Dhamma. You see the Dhamma, you see the paticca-samuppada. But you don't have sati, you don't have eyes to see with. What are we talking about? So, sati is the balancing. If I said yesterday of the importance of the seesaw, right? So think of the two people sitting on the seesaw, playing. The fulcrum must be sati. Make sense? So your job, as you're meditating, while you are practicing satipatthana throughout your day, not just when I say meditating, people sometimes think when I'm sitting only. No. Whenever you bring satipatthana to mind, and you walk, when you get up, sit down, lay down, sit. Every single junction point, every transition point when your sati is there with you, you have a chance to balance the whole equation. That's what I mean that by saying every moment is a perfect moment to experience, to enter into Nibbāna. We don't have to overcomplicate things. Bring sati, bring sati, bring sati. Okay? So this is key. So, just to recap on what I was saying yesterday, if you have too much investigation, okay, the breath is not doing well. Okay, why am I not? Okay, what's happening here? Okay, I'm bleeding into the hindrances. Okay. This could turn into vitakka vichara, thinking and pondering. Guess what? There's not going to be passaddhi, so I need to add passaddhi. That's when I come in and add more. Maybe I need to relax the breath a little bit. Maybe I need to come back to the feeling of metta in my body. Maybe I need to bring up this feeling of upliftment within me. Maybe I need to feel how my clothes, the loose clothes I'm wearing, or the breeze that's hitting my face or my hair, how nicely it feels. Guess what that is? You're inviting tranquility. Now the agitation in the mind, which is inevitably raised if I have too much, the plus sign, too much of it, including piti, which is joy. I need to bring in joy, especially when the mind is getting to be calm, but that calmness goes into too much dominance of passaddhi, and I have a propensity to fall asleep. I need to bring in piti, joy rather quickly. I need to really wake it up. Yes. You're laughing. You're laughing. You're joyful. Like I've never seen you before. Can you remember this in that moment where the mind goes, yeah, but everything is so boring. It's so dull. You remember this. That's why sometimes just remembering a smile will create a bigger smile. And suddenly, if you've had one true genuine moment of Bojjhanga, in this case piti Bojjhanga, your body will remember it. I don't care how old you are. And suddenly it will, well, now I just said Bojjhanga and I get goose flesh. Okay? This is what happens. And you sit and you go up, and you, like I said yesterday, every time you bring in piti, you can sit for at least an hour. Extra. And you sit even better. And your mind is like sharp. But remember, we're not working only with piti because it feels so good, right? But we have the other bojjhangas to work with. So that's why we say the calming group, calming. And then the energizing group. So whenever there's too much of one, I have to add something more. I was giving the example of, let's say, a food that needs salt. Most food do, right? Food recipes, unless it's pastry, I guess you also put some salt. When I used to make pizza dough, you have to add some salt. I mean, actually, even dessert, some. Anyhow, my dad, when he was teaching us how to make, like to start the grill, to start the fire on with charcoal, he would teach us how you need to start the fire, but then you have to walk away. But then the moment that it's dying down, you go back and you add some air flowing through it. You got to leave some room for the air to flow through it. Otherwise, I was like, why? But I have to protect it so that no. The air is not your enemy, the enemy of the fire. No, you need the air flow. So it's like, okay. But then if I do this too much, it's going to die out. No, you do it the correct amount. And that's what you're doing. You're trying to start this whole mechanism of applying harmony, balance in the Bojjhanga. Does this make sense? It's not rocket science. It's just sitting science. Or walking, depending on, or lying down science, or standing science. Okay, so I'm going to erase this board because, I'm going to go to the next topic that came up. So I've just made quick notes here. Well, it's actually related to this. So I hope so. Yes, it is. Sometimes the hindrance comes, or you feel like you've hit the deepest point of your sitting for that day, or that moment, that period, and you're holding back and you're afraid. I say afraid because many times what you're dealing with, this is what I meant by mental surgery, not brain surgery. You're doing mental surgery. Very fine, delicate, intricate work we're doing here. This is not easy. Even though I said earlier it's not rocket science, but your sensibility, your sensitivity has to be increased, because you're working with the most sophisticated instrument in the whole universe, your mind, the mind. And you're learning how to understand, how to tweak a little bit of this, a little bit of that, so that you can gain more and more states of comforting quietude, so that wisdom can arise. Remember, the agitated mind can never experience Nibbāna. So we're preparing the ground for a non-agitated mind. Okay. So what happens is you get to a point and the mind experiences a little bit of calmness or tranquility or upekkha, but it's too afraid. It's holding on. It doesn't want to trust. This is why metta is one of the most powerful, to my knowledge, the most powerful tools that I came across, if applied properly, according to Lord Buddha's guideline, which is the Satipatthana. Now, what I mean by this, or the image that I get, have you ever flown a kite or seen someone flying a kite? My brother taught me how to fly a kite. He's 7 years older than me. And we used to make it from scratch. We just had to go and buy the colored paper. And I couldn't wait for summer to come so we could go and buy it. And we didn't have money we couldn't afford glue. So we would go into the kitchen and ask grandma to give us some flour. So we would add some water to the flour. And it becomes, voila, glue. So we would cut it, this and that. So we would go and get some bamboo and cut it, and so we can actually make the frame. That's it. Long story short, we would be up on the roof. My brother would show me how to fly a kite, but then I would get to a nice distance and the wind is perfect. And I'm not letting the string loose. I'm afraid. I worked on this. What are you talking about? This is a beautiful thing. If I let it go, it will go. But that's not what the kite was made for. The kite is like a bird. It needs to be given freedom to go as far as it can. We would also make nice tails, long. Too bad kids these days, they don't know what the joy of that. They're too busy with the PlayStation, whatever. They can't even look at each other. They can't even relate with one another. So I would like you to think about that. So you're holding on to the string of the kite, and the wind is coming and saying, hey, I got this. You did good, but let me show you what we can do with this kite. So here's the little boy holding on to the string, and the kite is over here. So if I hold on too tight, it will snap. And in this case, in the meditation metaphor, the metaphor that I'm using for meditation practice, is you're not going to feel well from that meditation, including a beautiful meditation like metta practice, metta bhavana. You will have a tough time. You will actually create headache, frustration, even resentment next time you come to the interview, because I used to give the example, this is when I was a therapist to clients, to patients. I would say, imagine you just bought a brand new Ferrari. Brand new, 300,000, maybe $500,000 worth Ferrari car, the real thing. But you decide to drive it at 30 kilometers an hour. That's not what the Ferrari is built for. You have to drive it at least 200 kilometers an hour. Yeah, every once in a while, you have to really floor the gas pedal so that the engine feels what it's supposed to feel. So what I'm trying to say in so many different ways is when it comes to new territory and you're experiencing deeper levels of tranquility, samadhi, upekkha, don't hold the string too tight. Give it some room. Give it some room. Keep holding it. But then I saw how you can hold the string. You can hold the string without holding it, So you can just have it in your hand. It's still there. Otherwise, how would you be able to balance the equation of the Bojjhangas? You need to have some grip, and that's where sati comes in. Sati tells you if you're holding it too tight. Otherwise, it would be like Venerable Ananda was given this analogy. If you're holding a quail or a bird in your hand, if you hold it too loose, what will happen? It will fly away. A living bird, it will fly away. What if, to avoid it flying away, you approach it with fear and you go, what will happen? It will die. Yeah, choke. That's what we're doing. We're choking the meditation practice. And then we think that the technique is the problem, or the tool, the object of meditation is the problem. It's not. It's our attitude. So this is teaching us what? Yes, but it's also teaching us, other than the balance, it's teaching us about what attitude problems we have. Most people go to meditation thinking that they are going to be given something that's going to change their lives as they're sitting nicely in the passenger seat. Yes, next exit, please. Yes. No. This is all about you understanding where your hang-ups are. It's like being in a relationship, isn't it? You get into a relationship, you're expecting all this love and this happiness and this paradise, this and that, but you completely exclude yourself from the equation as if you have no role to play in this. The main actor as if it's the other person. They're the one who's supposed to give you love and attention and security, all these good stuff. Meanwhile, you're just there as, hey, no. It's how you approach the relationship. So that is a healthy way to approach meditation. Any kind of meditation object, kammatthana you're practicing, that's irrelevant. How you're approaching the practice, the kammatthana itself, whether it's anapana, whether it's body sensations, whether it's, again, the repulsive, looking at the dead body, maranasati, or metta. It's my approach to the technique. So, how can you sit there and when the upekkha comes, you don't kill the bird by squeezing its life out of it? It's a 5-letter word. Trust. Trust. This is what I mean when I tell students, trust in your goodness. Sometimes when I say that to people, like, okay, Bhante, how am I going to bring up a metta? if all else fails, can you trust your goodness? They have to really probe to identify, what are you talking about? What goodness are we talking about? Me? Goodness? They won't say this cognitively, subconsciously, emotionally. That's where they are at. Meanwhile, we sit and we expect the world from the practice. We expect Nibbāna, the greatest achievement that anyone could ever attain. But without trusting, how in the world is that possible? The same with a relationship. We want love, we want this, we want happiness, we want this. Am I trusting? At least trust myself. That's the key point. I need to trust myself. That's the key. It doesn't have much to do with the other person. This is when I say this to people, they're like, what do you mean? Most of us come with so many expectations to the mat, to the cushion, expecting miracles. It's not going to happen. So loosen up your grip on the string, the kite string. I hope that's giving you some ideas. Another thing that came up was, actually, it's interesting that all of these themes that I'm talking about today are very related to one another, with one another. Now I'd like to talk about a perfect example, a character from the Nikayas. Almost every Buddhist family knows about him. Even you don't have to be Buddhist to know about him. Angulimala. His name was Ahinsaka, the non-violent one, the one who never harms a fly, basically. That was the superlative character that he had. Unfortunately, he came across the wrong people, and one of them being a wrong teacher who thought that he was having an affair with his wife behind his back, so he wanted to punish him. So he said, oh yeah, in order for you to graduate, because he was at the top of his class, I guess you could say in those days, he said, you need to go and bring me the fingers, one person, one finger. You need to bring me a necklace with 1,000 human, 1,000 fingers. A necklace with 1,000, that's what it means. Anguli, anga means one. In this case, a finger. Mala is the necklace. Necklace made of fingers. He had some problems with that, obviously, because he had lived the life with kusala. His parents had raised him properly. But because of his blind devotion to his teacher and his greed, that, oh, he's going to teach me a secret thing, that the ultimate of that this yogic school could give me, this Vedic school, I will do whatever he says. And so he blindly goes and starts, and he was a very well-trained martial artist. He was a very well-trained warrior in a sense. He came from the top of the caste system in India. So he was very well taken care of. So now he went into the woods, into the wilderness, and started trapping people, killing people. He did not make a difference between a child, an old person, a woman, a man, none. And he would kill, and eventually he became numb to the whole killing process. So he started killing people left and right, and cut their hand. He didn't say, okay, I'm just going to take one of your fingers, okay? Let's move on and forget about this ever happening. No. He had to kill them first. That was the condition. Kill, take the finger, tie it up into a necklace, put it around your neck, move on to the next one. It became so bad that King Pasenadi of Kosala, who was one of the greatest kings of India at the time, he and his armies, his generals, were terrified of him until he got to 999. He had 999 fingers around his neck. He was missing one, and he was excited. But he was also disgusted from himself. He was numb. He was desensitized. He was no longer living. You become like an animal after even the first killing. But then the greed kicked in, the blindness, the delusion. There's no sati, but his heart is going crazy. His mind is extremely agitated. He wants release. And when you're doing a long retreat where you're pushing and pushing and pressing and killing that bird with your pure mental power, your vidya, you just are dying to just get a sense of release and relief. He was looking for relief just to end this crazy, mad episode of his life. Until he sees, because the king gathers his armies and he is headed towards that part of the jungle where in his kingdom where he was last heard of. Meanwhile, his mother, Angulimala's mother, hears about this and she goes straight to that part of the jungle to save her son. He's a murderer, but he's her son. So she shows up. Lord Buddha sees this in his mind, that, oh boy, he's going to kill his own mother. And there is a universal law that cannot be broken, which has to do with the Dhamma not being realized, no matter how many punyas or merits you have in your past, but you kill, you harm either of your parents, it's impossible for you to attain Nibbāna in that life. And Lord Buddha sees in his mind that Angulimala was perfect ready. He was ready to attain that day. But he's this close to killing his own mother. This is the kind of teacher Lord Buddha was. He left everything immediately and he just, using his abilities, he showed up in between his mother, Angulimala's mother, and Angulimala. And Angulimala had already pulled his bow. His arrow was in it. And it was about to be released. And Lord Buddha comes in between him and his mother. Well, the Buddha is far closer to Angulimala in distance. He might miss the arrow to hit his mother. Well, it's too tempting to kill the Buddha. Plus, he's a recluse. He's a samana. Okay. I guess it's going to be the finger of a samana today as the 1,000th finger. He puts down the bow and arrow, takes out his sword, and goes after the Lord Buddha. Unfortunately, he's not able to catch up. He's running and running and running, and they used to say that he would run faster than a stallion. He would catch up with elephants running, charging. He was so strong, but he, for some reason, Lord Buddha was walking, he wasn't able to catch up. Finally, he starts yelling, "Samana, samana, stop it! Stop it! Stop running!" And Lord Buddha says, "I have stopped long time ago running." And he says, "You're a samana, you're not supposed to lie. You're lying, obviously, because I'm trying to run and catch up with you. I can't, so you're running. And I know I'm running." He says, "I have stopped killing. I have stopped terrorizing. I have stopped running after my lower impulses. It is you who still is running." And Angulimala, because he is ready, those words of Lord Buddha penetrate his heart, penetrate through the delusion, penetrate through his numbness. He was numb to feeling, but that opened up his heart for the first time. It was no longer jaded. And he couldn't stand in front of Lord Buddha, so he had to go down on his knees. Because now he was facing his highest potential. And he drops his weapons, his sharp weapons. And he asks for ordination. Now, you can think of this as you sitting there and you've reached a new way station in your practice, a new level, if you will. and you are saying, well, I don't know what lies beyond this point. Let me just get up from this sit and then just like pretend that this didn't happen. Let me walk it off. The mind has become so calm, but I'm not willing to continue and see where this leads. Angulimala was curious enough to say, I am saying goodbye to my past. But once you say goodbye to your past, it is a goodbye to your past. This is what I tell to students sometimes. Where are your eyes located? Your actual eyes. The front of your face or behind your head? Front of your head or behind your head? Here. So you could see what's in front of you, not what lies behind you. Most of us walk like this. Throughout life. This is what we do. I can't believe you did that to me. I can't believe I did that to those people. Okay, I need to realize what I did, but I have to get out of that because it's in the past. Am I the same person as I was then? Yes or no? Okay, if I'm not, then why am I talking? Why am I dwelling on it? This is the reason, him letting go, that allowed him to experience Sotapatti, that moment, when he was on his knees in front of Lord Buddha. He was not thinking about him being this close to killing his mother that day. He was not thinking about the 999 people that he killed that day. He was not thinking about that. He simply was facing this highest potential for him, this blessing that has just come to him. At that moment, he asks for ordination immediately. And Lord Buddha gives him the ordination. That's it. No ceremony, no nothing. So he comes with Lord Buddha as a bhikkhu. They shave his head, give him robes, give him a bowl. In those days, the usual bowl was made out of clay. That's why we have to be extremely careful. That's why we have so many rules around the bowl. So when you're going in and out of the doorway, let's say a door, you always have to put it down somewhere safe and then open the door, hold it, and then pick it up and then go through. Why? Because there were people going in and out of the door, and because by accident, boom, now your food source, the bowl, is crushed. So just a side note for you, because after that, Venerable now, Angulimala, or Ahinsaka, almost every time he went to the village, the people of the village who had relatives killed at the hands of Angulimala would identify him. First, they would get scared, and then they would gang up and attack him, especially because he's a samana now. He's harmless, ahimsaka. So they would hit him with rocks, clubs, slap him, kick, all these things, and he would come oftentimes back to the vihara, crawling, bleeding, head cracked open, with the bowl, the clay bowl, cracked. So he had to really use some portions of the bowl that it's still like kind of hollow, so he could reach in and grab some rice and eat. Lord Buddha would see him in that much pain and he would say, bear it, Brahmin, bear it, bear the pain. Because, he says, especially after he became an arahant, because he says, had you not become an arahant, you would have to carry the burden of all these deaths, of these people you murdered. You would be in the hell realms for a long, long, long time. But as an arahant, this would be the last birth. That would be the end of it. So this is what is really important for people to be mindful of. I know it's become like a legend or like a myth in many, inspiring one nevertheless, but we need to also understand what took place there. He was a human being, unlike us. I mean, not unlike us. It was just like us. But we think that our situations are unique. So, you can use the example of Venerable Angulimala to inspire you, because sometimes I see meditators coming in and they look down upon them. Earlier I was saying, can you see the goodness in you? Trust. Without trust in that goodness of yours, it is again impossible to attain Nibbāna. Nibbāna is not at a place, a secret, Swiss bank account somewhere, or hidden in some castle deep in the jungles of somewhere in Neverland, somewhere in the universe. No. So there needs to be that trust from you in order for you to be able, because if Angulimala was able to see himself having the potential to attain, we must do the same. It's an inspiration. I don't think you killed anyone in this life. I haven't killed anyone that I know of in this life. So I can't be that bad as Venerable Angulimala. But he himself became an arahant. Okay, so we have hope for ourselves. Makes sense? So I say this to encourage you, seeing that today is the last day of the retreat, but you need to continue. The retreat never ends. It allows you to go deeper and deeper. That's what it's supposed to do. So I'll stop here, because even though I have to give the sutta in an hour and a half, so this ended up being another one. It's okay, as long as it's benefiting you and benefiting listeners. Are there any questions about any of this? I think I touched upon everything that you had inquired. Oh, one thing I forgot. Just like in the case of the kite, I mentioned you have to loosen up your grip to allow it to go up. The other analogy that I was sharing with another student today during interviews is we have to let go of the baggage. We have to let go of the extra stuff that we carry with us. It could be guilt, it could be someone else's mistake, it could be our mistake, it could be something. Because when you're going deeper and deeper and deeper in your meditation, there are times where you will come across some hurdles. Again, this has to do with your self-image, how you see yourself. That's why I was saying, can you see the goodness in you? Even this much. Now, if you can't, there's a lingering negative something in the background. I was mentioning it to you about the submerging into the water. So years ago, when I was learning how to do scuba diving, and they were training us to get certified, and we went down to about 30 feet, something like that, I think. And my heart was beating so fast because I was in a totally different environment. I was surrounded by fish. It was the Pacific Ocean. And slowly, slowly, the 30 feet became deeper and deeper. And now, because I had claustrophobia, which I was also conquering in my head, fear of tight places. And I looked up and I saw countless tons of water over my head. And I'm like, okay, get out, get out, get out, get out. That was fear. But there were other times where I'm trying to go down and I notice there's a jacket you have to wear. As a scuba diver, you wear this, it's called BCD, which is Buoyancy Control Device, I think. And what you have to do is you fill it up first before you jump into the water, so it keeps you afloat. Now, if you want to, that's why you're there in the water, you need to go into the water and you really submerge yourself into the depths of the water. Now, the problem was you empty, because it has this gadget with the tube, and the tubes go into the tank, oxygen tank, which is mostly nitrogen. So when you are empty, you need to empty it out. Otherwise, if your life, well, BCD is the jacket, if it has just a little bit of air in there, you will not be able to go down, no matter how hard you try. You won't go down. So what you have to do is you have to pull that the tube, and you have to expel all the air out. So the ignorance that we are sitting with when we meditate, if it's there, if the attachment is there, you know what's going to happen. The satta bojjhangas are not going to come in view in perfect harmony, meaning Nibbāna is not going to be taking place because I have too much stuff. Too much stuff, too many kilesas are there running the show. So empty your BCD from all kilesas. Empty your jacket from all the kilesas, the defilements, these expectations you have of yourself. Make sense? I might have given you too much, but better too much than nothing, or too little, right? So I'll stop. No questions came up, right? Stop here.